There we go. Are we good? We're live.
Are you able to interact with the audience and make sure the audio is going through?
Yeah. All right. This is the new webinars that we're doing with this setup. Let us know if anybody can hear us. See in there. You're gonna have to read out some. I can't see that far.
Comments.
Okay. Okay. So you can hear us, right? Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm Dave Farrow, as you probably know by now. This is my long time friend, Luan, and he's a doctor here in Guam. We are coming live from Guam. So why don't we start off? You're supposed to interview me, but I guess we're going to go back and forth a little bit. I had to introduce you, but talk to them a little bit about what we were doing in Guam and the conference, and then we're going to give a little piece of that in the webinar.
Sure. Yeah. So that was definitely a great turnout, and this is actually something I've always wanted to do, is bring some sort of leadership conference to Guam. And sometimes we talk about brain rot, or just not enough leadership, and that's the deterioration of some of the businesses and things like that. So I wanted to go with the angle of using the mind, using the brain, elevating it to be able to have great leadership skills. And I think we added many facets to the brain here. And I added, as a physician, more of the biohacking, how to improve cognition based using supplements, lifestyles, using genetics to understand your behavioral tendencies and your maybe risk for Alzheimer's, things like that. And
So
even
just so everyone knows, Luan here is an expert in, I would say, longevity science. He's a doctor with a clinic here, and he also treats patients around the world. He has all sorts. I feel like you're a really good source for quality. Like if I want to get my DNA done, right? But I don't want it to be like on record in the NSA somewhere. You know, like you know where that is, right?
Yeah.
And you showed me also a supplement that can get heavy metals out of my body without really harmful treatment, and we talked about peptides a lot. So you're really on the cutting edge of a lot of that biohacking and longevity science. So if anybody has any questions like that, let us know. Maya, if you can be close and just read any interesting questions, let us know, because I can't read that far. Thank you. We have wonderful assistant Maya here, who's doing all the tech support here, and we're new to the StreamYard system. So you brought me to Guam along with another speaker and yourself, and mainly because Guam is really interesting. Those of you who don't know, Guam is this island that is quite secluded from the rest of the mainland. It's a long distance. I'd say its closest neighbor is Tokyo, and Tokyo is even secluded from the mainland of Asia. And Guam has some challenges lately, economic challenges and stuff. It's very reliant on its military base for sustenance. So you are a big part of the Guam Young Professionals, and this is like an entrepreneurship group, kind of branching off of the
Guam Chamber of Commerce.
Guam Chamber of Commerce, And this probably can apply to anybody out there who's in a situation where your hometown is not doing as well as you'd like it to do. That's that's the story from all across America.
Right.
And so you took it upon yourself to say, hey, let's inspire the youth. Let's say, like the internet exists. We don't have to keep on thinking of just this island mentality. You can think of a business that impacts the whole world, but they really had to start with their mindset. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, you hit it on the nail. And I think it's just because of circumstances, with our main industry is really tourism, and a lot of our tourists are Japanese, Korean, some from China, and it's a struggle, especially because the American dollar strong, which is great for me, but it makes it very expensive, right, to just even have dinner here if you're a Japanese or Korean tourist. So that's a big deterrent sometimes, and you start to look at other countries like Philippines and neighboring Asia countries like Thailand, and even Vietnam now, and that's really drawing in a lot of tourists because of the cost, right? So that's what we're facing with, and so a lot of our industries rely on that. So that has, we haven't recovered post-COVID, and now we're relying on a lot of the military buildup for our industry.
Well, there's a lot of people who haven't recovered post-COVID too.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
I remember I told you I've been very public about it. How I had a lot of challenges during COVID myself,
Mhm.
and completely changed my whole life around. And my business was we really struggled for a year in 2022 and a bit of 23. And what I learned in that time is exactly what you've been trying to get people across to Guam, which is what I want people to know in this webinar, is that mindset is the first step. I talked to so many people at this conference that they were just thinking of like these four walls or this city or this area. And when I sat down with them, I was talking to them about, like, one of the biggest examples for mindset and growth is investors, right? So we're dealing with a lot of young people. Maybe there's a lot of people listening right now that you want to start your own business, or you're working on promoting something and you don't have the funds for it, right? That's age-old problem. And a lot of people don't realize that, when you're young and starting out, or even if it's your plan B, if you're at your second stage in life and you're rebooting, very often you don't have the funds for these things. But that doesn't mean the money is not there. So we were talking about how to get investors, how to get grants, how to get actually this is kind of what you did, where you wanted to bring people to Guam, but you didn't pay all of your own money. You've been very generous with your own hospitality, but you used an organization and you got sponsors for the event, and those sponsors each contributed something. And that's how financing happens. So it all starts with that mindset of making it happen. And you've got to get rid of the limiting belief that money is the obstacle. Money's a tool. And we were talking about another real estate project that I have, and I have an investor that's given me, given the project, I should say, like $600,000. But he's doing it because it's an exciting project for him. So I don't have to earn that $600,000. I've got that, and then I can use that for the project. So I don't have to wait another 10 years to save that up, or 5 years or whatever to do that. I can get started now. And so how would you say that mindset is really here? How would you like to see it changed?
Yeah, like you just said, we have to expand outside of just trying to raise money from our bootstraps, right? And use investors. And that's even, I haven't even thought about that. And I'm always thinking, do I want to be, tied down to an investor too? But you've opened up my, thought process that it still could be safe and reliable, and you can scale too. So,
well, you can get an investor that is a loan that you pay back. It doesn't have to be giving up equity.
Yeah.
But also, like, look at some of the most successful people. They give up equity in their company, but the company ends up being worth so much more than they would have gotten on their own. So their total net worth is so much more. So it really depends on the individual situation. I'm hesitant to give up equity, but as I've grown older, I realized that time is a more valuable resource than equity. And a lot of people are just so afraid of giving up equity because, like, oh, what if this becomes big and I'll lose control of it and everything? But you have to be terrified of, like, what if this takes 5-10 years to get off the ground, or never gets off the ground?
Right. Yeah. So, and this has also kind of taught me that I guess you could hedge some of that that safety net, or hedge some of that danger. Is you got to find that right team. And we've always had that, just you and I, we've been in contact for 20 years, but we've always had, I guess, that connection of trust for some reason. Like, we've trusted each other, and like jumping into a project with you is, I don't think twice about or have any doubts.
Well, you should never do business with anybody that like, I always make contracts with people. We haven't made a contract, but most of the time I make contracts with people. But there's the age-old saying that I never make a contract with somebody who you ever expect to see in court. You know what I mean? It's like you don't want to do anything with somebody who you suspect or just don't feel comfortable doing business with. You got to have that trust first.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Hey, Maya, are there any questions, or it looks like there's a lot of good comments?
Okay, people are just mentioning Guam.
Awesome.
Someone almost grew up in Guam because their parents were set to move there as teachers.
Oh, nice.
When their mother got pregnant with their brother.
Okay.
Everyone else is just saying hi. From Carmel, California.
I see Ed there, and Corey, hey, nice to see you. And Jill, that's awesome. Yeah. All right. Yeah. So some of the comments are just that they have some connections to Guam. I had no idea what Guam was until you started talking about it, and
Yeah.
I didn't even do. I apologize. You've been my friend for 20 years, and I didn't do a lot of research until I was like, I'm actually going to go to this place. Like, what the heck is a Guam? You know. So this brings us to our topic today, which is that mindset and the brain hacks of what I call memorable marketing. But really, it's understanding how the brain makes buying decisions. But that also determines how we make personal growth decisions, how we decide to work out instead of eat chips and stuff, and how do we, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the psychology behind that motivation. So if I can start with a little bit of instruction from what I did yesterday, I started off teaching like a memory technique. Right. And we have this fun game of add-on where we go through a list of like 12 to 20 items and we make a silly picture between each one of these items, just 2 at a time. And then at the end, everybody recalls the list forwards and backwards. Now, as a doctor, one of the tests for Alzheimer's is that very list technique. And how do most people perform on average?
Like if you do a list of 20, right? Like you said, the average is going to be 5 to 6, right?
Yeah,
At
5
the
to
most,
6.
right?
Now,
Yeah.
back in the 80s and 90s, the average was 7 or 8.
Yeah.
I did not say 6 or 7 to the you Zennials out there or your Gen Zs. It's like 7 or 8. And so that's actually why phone numbers were 7 digits long, because the idea was that the brain naturally could hold on to that much. And now we're 5 or 6. And a lot of people attribute that to technology because we're not exercising our memory, exercising our brain as much. So when we go through that list, you think, oh, this is a fun little exercise. But then I said, well, what are we really doing? We're taking the first item and we're associating it to the second. So when you think of the first, it reminds you of the second. Pretty simple. Right. Then the second reminds you of the third. It's called the reminder principle, and it's an age-old technique. But then I asked, when you think of yourself, what does that remind you of? Right? That is your self-esteem. When you think of a product, what does that remind you of? That's the product's brand. When you think of your friends, what does that remind you of? That's their reputation. And when you take this simple principle of reminder in the brain and you realize that it applies to, or it's a really simple, easy way to think of all these sorts of psychological situations and all these principles that people get so in depth on psychology, on into the terminology and everything. And what if you could just break it down to something as simple as, one thing reminds you of the next. And what does this situation remind you of?
Okay. Yeah. So honestly, and some of the other takeaways I had was about the marketing of just having the person, or even on the interviews, right? Having that person already visioning that they're already there. Yeah. That was one of my big takeaways.
One of the things that we do at Farrow Communications, and I can't take credit for this. Arden, shout out to you and the team. My people do a fantastic job. I can say that I trained them, but I can also say they have far surpassed the master. They are so good at this. But we start with data and we pitch the media. So if you're an author, we get you in like Entrepreneur or Business Insider or something truly organically, like so that those outlets really want you in. And then in that process, though, what works is to use descriptive language that makes the person reading it imagine they are in the interview. So when I talk to somebody in the media, I'll say like the studio, what area is it in? I don't know how far it is from the airport or something like that, and like just those sort of factual things get them to visualize me in the studio, right? And even something as simple as I can't wait to be in the interview. I think I can, I think I'll really gel with this host. Could you imagine us just kind of, chatting about golf or whatever, or something like that? And it's those little personable things. The trick is to find a natural way to get them to visualize you actually at the place. So this is a good tip for anybody, even if you're not trying to get in the media, but if you're just trying to get a job, which is a hassle nowadays too. I hear people apply for thousands of jobs and get very few callbacks. But if you can talk to the interviewer in such a way that they visualize you in the office or in the place of business, then you're much more likely to get the job. So the reason for this is a simple principle of the brain, that your mind on some level can't tell the difference between what is real and what is imagined. I know it sounds crazy, right? That literally is the definition of crazy. In some cases, you can't tell the difference between what's real and imagined, but also it's also the human experience. So I use an example in the talk of movies. We can have like Brad Pitt or some movie star in a movie where he's playing a drug addict or some homeless person or something, right? And you can cry during the movie, you can be enraged during the movie, you can feel all these emotions, knowing that guy's he's doing all right, he's making lots of money, doing this. But our left brain doesn't talk to our right brain in that way, and as long as we see it with our senses, our brain thinks it's real enough to have feelings about it. And that is the essence of good marketing. Is if I can get you to visualize something enough that you have feelings about the product or service or person, then that's where we make the association.
Okay. Yeah. Since you're already here, can I use my life experiences or life situations and kind of try work through that? Is that cool?
Let's go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's start with the basic things, right? Because my job for the most part in the clinic is really counseling people, almost convincing them or motivating them to have a healthier lifestyle, right? Because that's probably one of the biggest levers if you want to get over metabolic disease, especially because that's one of the biggest killers, that top 3 killers, right? Cancer, diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, right? So
aside from quitting smoking, that's like the most important thing you can do. Yeah.
So a lot of that is, 3 months in, 3 months out, all the time trying to remind them. And sometimes it's always frustrating that that number doesn't move, and I'm always chasing that number. But so now that kind of dawned on me. Okay, I use a little bit of motivational intervening technique, but maybe I should start using a little more visualization with my patients.
Okay, yes. So this is another thing that came up. I called it the power of questions, and I use this in my sales process. So if some of you watching are my former customers, and you might remember when I did this to you, but I hope you like it because it was ethical and we did a good job for you, and we delivered a good service. But if you really want to persuade somebody, then you have to either change the vision in their head or you have to fit into the vision into their head. So everybody has a mental landscape. You can close your eyes and navigate out of this room without falling over, right? Like we're literally visualizing this room. There's an old saying that we don't see anything, our brain sees, and we just see a recreation in our head of what our brain actually sees. If that makes sense, that's why optical illusions are a thing. I'm getting off topic. So the point that I'm trying to make is that that person who has that unhealthy lifestyle, they have a vision of themselves. They might think, I'm addicted to chocolate. They might think, my genetics mean there's nothing I can do, or I was traumatized as a kid and I'm overeating or something like that. Or they might just think, hey, cheesecake tastes good. What's the harm? Like, you know what I mean? Like they could have a whole bunch of sorts of belief, but it's all wrapped up in like a vision of themselves. Yeah. So if you ask them questions and find out what their vision is, right? Say like, what is the, the food that you struggle with, or, what have you tried dieting and what did you find difficult? Like ask them how they see their relationship to food, let's say, right? And then one of the best techniques is just to put them in the future, saying, if you stay at this lifestyle, how long do you think you're going to live, and how healthy and how good will you feel in those last 5-10 years? It's a harsh thing, but you're a doctor, you can have those conversations, right? And then that's where the motivation comes from. If they start to have a vision that, the plan that I have is deteriorating, and I know you deal with a lot of patients that are really struggling, and motivation is a real thing. I don't think anybody who's overweight is lazy by any means, but motivation is something that they might not have people in their lives that are motivating them and positive, helping them positively,
Do you think, because a lot of my also patients are in their 50s, 60s, they've had these eating patterns forever, right? And there's a little bit of stubbornness or more habits, right? They're just used to eating this way. Do you think that's kind of intervening technique or that visualization is powerful enough to break through? Because what I don't want is sometimes people change their life after the catastrophic event, right? It takes a heart attack or stroke to finally realize, okay, I got to change my life. And that's what I'm there to try prevent, right? But do you think just that visualization is able to break through those habits?
There's only a couple of things that create change in the brain that we know of, and one of them is trauma. So instant change is usually created by trauma. I have some traumatic thing, and now I'm afraid of this, or I'm so motivated to get healthy because I nearly died, that sort of thing. So what you want to do is get them before the trauma, right? And that is possible by getting them to imagine what that trauma will be like, to see that you're headed for a train wreck. Because we as human beings are able to see into the future. And what I mean by that, I don't mean psychically. I mean, what separates us from the animals is that we know we're going to die. That's one of the biggest things that we consider as consciousness. So we can imagine what life will be like 10, 20 years from now. And as far as we know, dogs and sharks and others can't do that, right? So we are able to put ourselves into that position, and that does cause a change in behavior. So you want to get them kind of before that. The other thing that works in this case is real simplicity. So if you try to get onto like a calorie counting thing, and I'm talking from experience as well, I looked at all the research, and time again, if you try to like count calories and weigh things and measure things, you could keep that up for maybe a week or two. And then, you get busy, or you get, the holidays hit or something, you get out of your habits, and then you stop it. The simpler strategy is always the better one. And psychologically, the one that all the psychology tests say the best way to get rid of an addiction is actually cold turkey. So in the food world, that would be fasting. And that's worked incredibly well for me. But it's not just that. Like, they did a whole bunch of studies on smokers, and which stopping smoking aid was the best. Nicotine patches or gum or this or that, or like the fake cigarettes to make you think it. All of that stuff did not hold a candle to just cold turkey. And the reason is psychologically, it's simple. It's you have one rule and you stick to it. Right now, you can't go cold turkey on food, but you can go cold turkey on sugar. Right. Or you can go cold turkey on fried foods or whatever your challenge is. So like that's generally the best. Like, you want to get the motivation from that vision, and then you want to have some sort of achievable goal. Don't try to be like a fitness guru overnight, but you have like, I'll cut out fried foods if that's my big weakness for a month. And then when they accomplish that, they're like, oh, I can do this, and I can do more.
So, I mean, I guess some people can do the cold turkey, some people can, and you kind of have to ease them in. And I tell them, okay, stop the cigarettes, maybe 3. If you're doing a pack, do half, and then go over the time, and then maybe use other, devices and things to kind of wean off that are safer. But kind of going back to this, okay, so that
well, cold turkey works well because you have a set time. So it's like, if I'm fasting and I can't eat until 1 o'clock,
right?
If it's 12:30, I know I'm cheating if I eat something, right? But if I have like a bunch of complex rules and everything, and I'm busy, then my brain can kind of convince me, oh, it's okay in this case because we had this and we had that and everything. So
and I think that the cold turkey process could be achievable if I set up a program like, a 6-week, 3-month program, and most people are willing to kind of stick to that and go cold turkey on the sugar, right? But then the problem is that after, right, post 3 months, what's going to happen? So I'm trying to think that 3 months or whatever program will buy you a little bit of time, and that's where you start implementing the decrease those habits. So do you think
hopefully you build up confidence too, because you
Okay.
accomplish that. Like, a lot of people, they have no confidence that they can accomplish anything in this realm. So once you get a little bit done.
But do you think it's more effective for that time period? Because I'm trying to, like, one of the ways is to add positive psychology. Like, okay, when you visualize those donuts in the break room, should you visualize, when you're in your 50s, 60s, or retirement age, you're able to travel with your grandchildren, or the negative part of, this donut is going to kill you, right?
Well, okay, there is a neuroassociative technique for breaking your habits of food. I talk about it in my book, Brainhacker. I didn't
Mhm.
come up with it, but it worked for me. I had this one time where I was commuting to the office, and it was about a 45-minute commute.
Yeah.
I was hurting my back and I felt like crap and everything. And I went by Wendy's every single time.
Mm.
And I became addicted to the Wendy's Frosty. I would
Mm.
have, I'll just have a small one this time, right? I was gaining so much weight. It was crazy because, a little bit more sedentary and having a Frosty regularly. So I did a little trick where for about a week, I imagined, even while I was eating the damn things, okay, I imagined that there was like ants and spiders in the Frosty while I was eating it. And it was like just really gross. Bugs are a big thing for me, right?
Yeah.
And then by the end of the week, I couldn't eat a Frosty, and I haven't had one since.
Okay.
So you can ruin your love of a food,
Yeah.
but you won't get it back. So that's pretty drastic. But that would be a memory technique or associative technique for breaking that habit. And sometimes that's what it is. Sometimes people have like one food that they're just addicted to and one thing.
Mm-hmm. Now I got that connection. So you're a little bit not too comfortable about the bugs. So you're asking me because you're gonna go on a hike
we're gonna
today.
go to a hike here in Guam, and I'm like, how
there-
many bugs are there?
It's like, why are you asking me that?
I'm not a fan of bugs.
Okay. Yeah, there shouldn't be too much bugs. Like I said,
All right.
probably mosquitoes.
Sunscreen.
Yeah, so should be a good.
Well, I'm from
hike.
Canada, so mosquitoes aren't bugs. They're just friends. They're just ordinary.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's maybe go the next step up, right? I'm in the patient with the room. I could ask them these personal questions.
Yeah.
But now I also have a podcast, right? So I'm trying to reach.
I
a
want to tell
community.
you though, you as a doctor just attempting this would be fantastic. I think. Are we getting any neat comments that you wanted to mention?
Just a question.
Okay.
Someone applauding you for your team, you and your team.
Oh yes, the team is great, fantastic. I'll get the question in just a second. So I want to say that like the big complaint I hear time and time again is that doctors don't care. They are just treating the symptoms and they're not getting to the root. So you actually care. So the fact that you'd actually sit down and have this conversation with them is incredible, because I don't think there's anybody in society that has these conversations anymore. You don't have it with friends and family. It's considered rude and kind of minding your own business and everything, but the doctor is totally appropriate. So just jumping into that and just asking them about it and making them think about it is a level of care that I think is just, it's very impressive. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.
So what's the question?
Yeah.
So Jill said, I have a radio show, Be Bold America. Their question is, how could the art of memorable marketing be implemented to motivate someone new to listen and keep listening? For radio, expanding listener base is our goal.
Oh, excellent. Okay, so what you really want to do, this is a little bit of a hack, but I mean, everything's a hack. When we're trying to promote a podcast or a radio show or something like that, one of the best ways to do it is to find other people who are listening to something similar. So if you want to promote a podcast, go on other people's podcasts or be mentioned on other people's podcasts. Because if I put an advertisement on a billboard for a podcast, for example, right? I don't know what the percentage is, but I would guess, I don't have the numbers. If somebody has the numbers, let me know. But I would guess maybe there's like 30% of people that listen to podcasts regularly. Like some people are YouTubers, some people are onto TikTok. Some, everyone's got their thing. So only 30% of the people who are looking at that billboard are even your target market, right? But if you're on a podcast, 100% of people who are listening to that podcast listen to podcasts, right? So that's one of the first things, is go to where your audience is. And the second thing is, if you want to grow that listener base, one of the best things is to emulate another much more popular media. You might feel like, if I emulate them or copy them, then I'm not going to be original. But there's a lot of people, like I know a bunch of people in the podcast space that were kind of like, they're like, Joe Rogan, but for geeks or something like that. Like it's a little bit like this really popular thing, but for this audience, right? It's incredibly effective, because you want to be able to convey the message of like, why the heck should I listen to your show? You want to be able to convey it in like 2 seconds, right? So like for you, I would be like, you're the biohacker for longevity,
Mhm.
or maybe we're talking about lifestyle changes, right? Or health, you're the compassionate biohacker.
Mhm.
It was the vibe I get today, at least, right? And then people who are already interested in biohacking are like, oh, I'm interested in that, and maybe I'd like a compassionate view because some of the people in the space are kind of jerks, right?
Mhm.
They're very much like rah rah, like masculine energy, and they don't listen. So that would be the best like, why is it memorable marketing? Is because it's they already have an association to another show. Does that make sense? So when they think of, let's say they're a fan of biohacking, they already have their leaders in biohacking that they're fans of. So they already have an association there. To try to convince somebody to buy a product with no schema, with nothing that they can imagine, it's really, really tough. But if you say, hey, this thing that you're already familiar with and love, it's like that, but just better in this one way, then it's a much easier sell.
Mhm. Okay.
Right. It's like I always say, when we're selling people, you can't sell them on two things. You can either sell them on the fact that they need something, or you can sell them on the fact that you're the right solution for that thing, but you can't sell them on both. So you either want to get a customer who comes to you with a need, and they're just choosing between you and your competitors.
Mhm.
But if somebody comes to you and they don't even know that they have a need, you're never going to convince them to go with you. Because even if you convince them that, hey, you have this need, you have this challenge, they're still going to think, well, I'm going to shop around because you might not be the right solution for this. But okay, now that I know I need it, I'll look around for it. So you can only really sell one thing at a time. So find people who already want what it is you offer by mirroring other audiences.
Mhm. Okay. And you might have answered it already, but is there a different way to, I guess, draw out the questions in a bigger audience compared to a one-on-one with a patient to maybe influence them to change their lifestyle on the screen?
Oh, like when you're talking to an audience on the
Right.
screen? Yeah.
Mhm.
Questions are really good at getting people to visualize things.
Okay.
Right. So, you could ask questions. If I were you, and by the way, this is the type of thing I do on media training all the time. Every single one of my clients, we sit down and all I do is they tell me what their answer to questions would be.
Mhm.
And I would say, well, if I was you, I would say this. And the only reason I'm coming up and I feel I'm arrogant enough to tell people what to say on the air is because I've done well over 2,000 interviews. And I believe I have a good feel for how it'll come across. Right.
Mhm.
So if I were you, what I would suggest is, if you want to paint a picture, ask them where they're at right now. How do they feel?
Yeah.
What's their energy level like? Get a feeling of like where they're at and what they're doing. And then, say, just imagine your lifestyle. What's your diet like? How active are you? And now, if you stay on that path, what will you look like in 10 years?
Okay.
How much energy will you feel? Will you be in pain? Will you
Mhm.
be able to walk your daughter down the aisle, or will you need a wheelchair in a nursing home? Right.
Mhm.
And so things like that. So the same sort of thing we talked about, but you can do it just in a general question. And I do this all the time for our work. Where I'll talk to companies that I want to hire us for marketing services, and then they say, well, what's your marketing like right now?
Yeah.
What new projects are you doing right now? And if you keep that up, or how competitive will you be
Mhm.
in the future, going forward in the next few years? And sometimes it's just in the next like 3 quarters, like they're very short
Right.
time frames. And then you want to paint a different picture, like, well, if you do this, this, and this, where will you be in a few years?
Mhm.
And it's really powerful comparing images of like your better self and your not so better self. Your two possibilities. Everybody knows about the multiverse in Marvel, so it's kind of like that.
Mhm. Okay. And then, so you kind of paint that picture to help visualize what better life they could be, or potentially, even if they don't do it, what life they may suffer from, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of paint that picture, and now they get motivated. So at least for my podcast, I don't know if it's the right mindset, but I mean, I don't have that problem yet because I'm not that big in the podcast world yet. I don't have that many followers, but
You're big in your local
but
community.
I kind of I didn't even look for advertisers or sponsors. Sometimes, I don't know, I think with the traditional media, I see what happens. I just don't want to be a mouthpiece for anyone. I want to be able to recommend things that I believe in,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be influenced by other parties necessarily that are paying me, right? So the only, I guess, backdoor, the way I wanted to make money for the podcast was have affiliate links of products that I do believe in, right?
And your suggestions are really good. Like,
Mhm.
you can tell you've thought about them. You're not just doing it for the
Mhm.
money.
But how, so once you get to then to that state, is there a way to convey, okay, this is the way to, these are the supplements, or this is the link to get to and actually click and make that commitment to purchase, whatever said treatment plan I would suggest.
It is, you do need a lot more motivation to get somebody to actually make a buying decision than most people expect.
Mm-hmm.
I talk to this with my clients all the time, and we think to ourselves that you just need, I just need to have build a better mousetrap,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll make the world will beat a path to my door. And the thing is that in today's day and age, with disruption and technology and everything, it has to be a radically better mousetrap in
Mm-hmm.
order to motivate us to get off our butts to do it, because the cost of change is very high.
Mm-hmm.
We are very busy. We're overwhelmed. A lot of us are stretched financially too. So it's not an easy decision that's being made. So you don't just need to say, oh, my life will be like 10% better or something. You need to really sweeten the deal. So typically, to get people moving, you want to have some sort of first response bias, like the first 10, 15 people that click the link,
Mm-hmm.
you'll get this extra thing. Or, if you do, I would say that probably give them a time limit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you click this link this week, then you'll get an extra ebook from me, or a consultation or something. Like, have something that helps just thank them for getting off their butt, because
Mm-hmm.
the offer itself, even if it's compelling, even if it's going to be a better life, people are risk adverse. They just don't want to change unless they really have to.
Mm-hmm.
It's homeostasis, right?
Okay. All right. We'll keep that in mind, Maya.
I got to say this coffee is fantastic. Talk about the coffee a little bit. Do you know that the coffee that you're drinking might have like crap in it, mold and other things that could be making you sick? And I hate hearing that, because I love coffee and I get coffee from all over the place. I'm full of mold.
Yeah.
But this is a special coffee that is, how do you describe it?
So I shipped for the conference. I wanted to really engulf and
Mhm.
really embrace the habits you have to biohack and have a optimal brain, right? So I helped out in designing the menu, the breakfast. Unfortunately, lunch was taken care of by another sponsor, so it was traditional local food with a lot of rice and additives. But for breakfast, I made sure I set that as a little bit more lower carb. I think having too much carbs in the morning will probably spike your sugar up and you dip.
Well, you actually
right?
said that you had a chart about how people made no difference other than they cut down on their carbs, and there was an increase in
their verbal memory. Yep.
Yeah.
So there's a
What do you attribute that to? Because carbohydrates are supposed to be fuel.
Yeah.
Like I know it can make you fat and all, but a lot of people don't think of that as making you dumb. Or
I didn't. I just followed the study, and I didn't really look into the mechanism of action. I think for the most part, people just, when they eat, especially really high processed carbs that really spike your sugar, and you have that big dip because of the big spike and then dip, that's when you feel that low is when you're kind of in a state of fatigue and sluggishness. So
it lowers your insulin resistance,
or increases your
insulin
resistance over time.
Yeah,
if you keep doing that, yes.
But that would affect the energy that your brain has to work with, and the cells and everything.
So I did come up, my health coach and I, before we came up with a new gen type diet. Diets are very personal, and but the way we designed the new gen diet was
New Gen is his
physical
brand,
therapy and brand.
his brand and longevity science.
Yeah. So so it's a little more designed where it's pretty much fat and protein in the morning, and then you'd introduce carbs more towards the end of the night, end of the night or dinner time, because that might allow you to sleep a little bit better. So but it's very personal, and it may work for people.
I've been fasting in the mornings.
Yeah.
Usually I try to fast until like 3 or 4.
Yeah. I've been intermittent fasting too.
Yeah. What would you suggest in that case to break a fast without? Because I've had times where I break a fast and I just need a nap.
Right.
You know what I mean? So what's the best way to break a fast?
Break a fast? Yeah. No matter if it's a 16 or 36 hours, I think you should start with protein type meal, and then maybe and then an hour later you can put the carbs in.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't like.
And you would say even fruit is a carb in this
Yeah.
case, right?
Yes.
A
And
lot,
there's
lot of people think of
fructose.
just
Yeah.
pasta and stuff,
Right. Yeah. So going back to the coffee, right? So yeah, I really went into the diet, and then I shipped in some mold-free coffee, organic, called Purity Coffee, and there's a few brands out there, and it's still pretty affordable. But yeah, we can have mycotoxins potentially, in our
Mhm.
coffee, in our grains. Because a lot of times, corn and a lot of our grains, after they are picked, they put it in these silos and just sit there for a while, and that could, you get some mold in the bottom of that barrel, right? So we can be exposed day in,
Do you
day
think
out
that's
from
why bread
mycotoxins.
spoils so quickly because it already has the spores in it?
Yeah, maybe.
Like if
Yeah.
it was made in smaller batches and the flour was, like made in a village like it used to be type thing,
Yeah.
that it
Yes,
wouldn't
great
have that.
questions. Yeah, I want to look into
That'd
that.
be
Why?
interesting,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Because you leave bread for a little too long and it
Hmm.
spoils. And then they add so many chemicals to it
Yeah.
that the stuff that doesn't spoil just never
Never
spoils.
spoils.
It's like it's
Have you seen
styrofoam.
that McDonald's
Yeah,
one
yeah.
where
I mean, the
it's
bread is
looking?
basically styrofoam. Like it doesn't seem like it's real food.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, and mycotoxins, I think, especially in a place like Guam, you can get in food sources, but obviously in water damaged buildings. But in Guam, with the humidity things, I think it's a big underplayed issue.
Mhm.
But mycotoxin, toxicity can have very vague symptoms, just headaches, fatigue, insomnia. And I've had a few patients that test off the charts on high on mycotoxins, and
So if
it's a
somebody
big
thinks that
issue.
that might be the problem, what's the best way to handle it? Do they do the test first, or is there just a supplement they can do, or something like
I
for
mean,
coffee?
I always preferentially always like to test. Sometimes the testing in itself could be cost impeding, and sometimes I just recommend straight to the supplement and see
Mhm.
what happens.
Well, you were
But
saying that with like heavy metals. There's this supplement you can take that just binds to the heavy metal,
mhm,
and you excrete it out.
yeah,
This is kind of a new technology because when I was growing up, I was told that heavy metals are like in there for good, and there's only a couple of chemicals that are very painful treatments and stuff for like lead poisoning and stuff
yeah,
that can even get it out of your system.
yeah,
And you're like, no, you can just take this supplement. And
yeah.
so, would you suggest if somebody thinks that that's a problem to just take the supplement
Yeah,
or
well,
get
well,
tested
for
first?
heavy metals, any detoxification process, I think, especially heavy metals, you probably want to work with a physician because sometimes if you don't do it right or don't have the right supplements, you can pull out potentially the heavy metals into your bloodstream. But if you don't have the right binders, then that heavy metal might travel to the brain, right?
Really?
And because if
Okay.
you, so the quality of
So is there
supplements
any
metals.
supplement that you would recommend, or they should really like go to a doctor because it's
I
much
would
more
say go
difficult?
go to, especially if unfortunately this the family practice doctors these days were not trained in that, and I had to
Mhm.
get a lot of additional training, especially in the field of like integrative and functional medicine, to
Yeah.
to learn about these things. So there are various protocols, and we also have to monitor your symptoms. Some people need a little bit more support and react differently once the
Mhm.
toxins come out. So you might need a little bit more better binders or higher dosing the binders. So I
Okay.
would, yeah, I wouldn't mess around and experiment yourself really
No,
when you're
I
trying to
wasn't sure.
detoxify.
That's
Yeah,
why we're asking. That's
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions, Maya? Just good comments. Awesome. Okay, I see some of the comments scrolling. I like the interaction. Okay, so tell me what are some of the best supplements? I mean, you were talking about new research about creatine and ATP
Yeah.
and even the blue was
Methylene blue.
the
Yeah,
methylene blue is very controversial. A lot of doctors are like, this is BS, but
yeah.
like you believe in it a lot. So tell me like right now what is the safe and just a really like you're crazy if you don't do these supplements or
Yeah.
these things.
Yeah, I think as a baseline that I can recommend broadly, and things should be safe, because some of the two things, definitely a multivitamin. I think the food quality has dropped. The soil quality is not as good as 50, 60 years ago. So,
Mhm. That's
I
why we get our food from a farm at my
yeah,
place.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. We literally, we know the name of the cow that we eat. and
Wow.
everything,
Okay.
Yeah.
And that would be ideal. Not too ideal on Guam. Everything is
Yes,
shipped in.
no, that's
So
true. That's true. But no, but a lot of like I'm in upstate New York, and a lot of
yeah.
people don't realize that if you're in any major city, you take a little drive into the country.
Mhm.
There are lots of farmers. They have little egg stands. They have little like
Mhm.
do your research. But there's a lot of groups out there that you can get farm raised fresh food, and it
Mhm.
doesn't have like just the chicken alone. I found a huge difference in taste when we bought from chickens from the Amish,
Mhm.
and the water weight for the stuff that was in the store. They basically buy a chicken like this and they soak it, and it expands in weight. So
Mm.
they can say it's a 16-pound chicken, but it's not
Mm.
16 pounds, right? If you
Okay.
actually have a proper chicken that was raised like that, it's the taste is just incredible. You can tell.
Yeah, because I noticed the chickens are getting bigger and bigger. Like, how is
Yeah,
this
yeah,
happening?
yeah,
Is
yeah.
it the growth hormones are giving it or
Yeah.
something?
It's just water and salt and
Okay.
stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So, as a baseline, I recommend just some sort of multivitamin. And
Yeah.
one of the kind of key tricks to tell if it's a pretty quality supplement or in terms of vitamins is look at the back and look at your B12, see if it says like methylcobalamin versus cyanocobalamin. Cyano is like cyanide. So a methylcobalamin is a little more conscious. I think generally a better supplement or better formulation.
People are typing this in. You'll
Yeah.
spell that for
So
people.
methylcobalamin, I don't know if you could type that in. But
Cobalt.
if you go to designsforhealth.com,
All right.
you'll be able to see the back of the label, and they see the ingredients and the actual dosages.
Yeah, anybody who's on this show, you have an email that you were invited on. You can get a hold of us if you have any questions. My team will give you back any information that you want. I'm happy to follow up.
Yeah.
We want to take some of these shows and we'll have them posted on Brainhackers, and then we'll have some materials below.
Right. So yeah, and I think multivitamins it's almost like an insurance plan, really. Like, I mean, you might be getting all your nutrients through food, but when I'm testing people these days, I mean, almost every person I test, there's one bit of deficiency, typically like a B12 or B6, even if they're eating meats. And so that's why the multi could be very useful to fill in that gap, because even your genetics could make it so that you're not processing or even if you have gut issues, you might not be absorbing all the you might be eating the right amount of food, but it's just not absorbing if you have gut issues.
That's
so
true.
So a multivitamin, definitely. And another thing is creatine. I think that's
creatine's
one of the
is a new
most
one for the
studied
brain, huh?
supplements. So many studies, super safe. Maybe if you have like really bad kidney disease, then there may be a caution, but I think across the board, very safe supplement to take. And the reason I say almost every 40-year-old, I believe, should be taking creatine, because number one, it's basically the raw material to make ATP or energy, right? So why not? Why wouldn't you want more energy? But because that's going to also translate to our brain energy, right? And 2% of the brain is 2% of our body mass, but it actually consumes up to like 25% of our energy consumption.
It's
So
the
we want to,
selfish
it
organ.
is. Some days maybe I only use it 10%.
And that's what I tell people all the time. They think, what should I? Actually, Maya, I'm not sure. We're using StreamYard as kind of a new thing, but can you see if we're recording this? Because it'd be good to get some of this as a clip later on. If not, then it's just can be live. But I think one of those things is record. You can look into it while we're talking. One of the things that I tell people all the time is, there we go, cloud recording. Does it say it's recording? There you go. Yeah, right there. Click on that. Maybe I'm not sure if do the left click. Oh, I guess can't go while it's going. We'll get it next time. All right, everyone is getting this live, is getting the real deal. But we're going to be doing a podcast later on,
Right.
and that'll be available for be posted on our site afterwards. So one of the things I always tell people, they ask, because people come up to me as the memory guy, and they're worried about dementia and memory loss and everything, and I tell them that the best way to think about health in the brain is basically anything that is healthy for the body is 10 times healthier for the brain, and anything that is slightly damaging to the body is much more damaging to the brain. And this is kind of across the board, because the brain is so selfish when it comes to nutrients. It sucks up
Mhm.
all the nutrients, sucks up so much of the oxygen, so much of everything. And it also is so sensitive to toxins and anything in the environment. So if you find that, like, if your diet and you're worried about that affecting your heart, you should really worry about that affecting your brain first.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, when you break it down, what I'm doing is quite simple, right? It's just remove the offending agents that are
Mm,
insulting the brain or any part of the body,
mhm.
and then give it the raw ingredients to function optimally, right? And now I'm getting into like what we talked about, visualization and things like that, is where the
Mhm.
mindset plays in, because the psychology does make a big difference on how your body is optimized or working efficiently,
Mhm.
right? If you have a negative attitude, it's not going to
And
operate.
this whole thing about, I didn't really plan on getting too much into the physical health side of business too much. So I'm really glad that I have you on here. We're going to talk more in your podcast about it too. But um, I've physical health has been such a big part of my life,
Mhm.
because when I was a kid, I was very sick. I was in chronic pain. I was hospitalized a lot. So I feel like people who've had kind of a brush with death and had a difficulty, they are much more aware of how important their health is. And I find that people who aren't taking care of their health at a younger age, as they get older, those habits just multiply and multiply. Like you said, somebody who's been
Mhm.
doing the same thing for 20, 30 years. But I wanted to inspire people a little bit, because, like, you look fantastic. You look like in great shape. I hope I'm looking pretty good. And a lot of people are surprised when I say that I'm 50 years old,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to make this about myself, but, like, also, you're in fantastic shape and everything. And it's totally possible to have the same energy level, strength, and just about the same vitality, I've found, that you had in your mid 20s, in your 40s and your 50s. Like, the body really doesn't, like, it does deteriorate statistically,
Mhm.
but that's because some people really treat their body terribly, and I think they throw off the statistics. But if you
Yeah.
treat yourself well, I think, right when you reach, like, kind of like that 25, 30, you can kind of keep that same level of vitality and energy and health
Right.
your 50s and into your 60s, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess the audience I want to appeal to is, there's these longevity guys, like, I don't know if you've heard of like Brian
Oh
Johnson,
yeah, yeah.
like he's to the max extreme, right? There's nobody that could do all his protocols,
Yeah.
take
He does
100
everything.
supplements, spends
But his job is to do that,
right.
though.
But
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
the purpose of him is what's possible, what's the absolute possible,
Right.
right? But
It's
it
like Goggins. I'm not going to
right.
wake up at 4 a.m. and
Right.
jog for a
But
marathon.
this is to the extreme. This won't
Yeah.
apply to the everyday person like me that has a
Mhm.
job, right? Have family to take care of. So I want to appeal to more of, as a father, family
Yeah.
man, working person, what's the minimal dose at least, right? What are the
Yeah.
5 habits and what are the few supplements that won't break the bank, but you can still get a big differential in
Yeah.
your life, right? And that's what I want to appeal to.
Well, it just amazes me, because I mean, I was watching, I forget what show I was watching here, but it was somebody in their 30s, and they were
Mhm.
talking about, like, once you reach your 30s, you have aches and pains, and you don't sleep as well, and
Mhm.
you if you run for the bus, you're out of breath, and I'm like, no, that's you got to put down the McDonald's too much. That shouldn't be in your 30s. Are you serious? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
it's so, like, give a picture to somebody if they do, just like, not Goggins style, and not like these super, hyper alpha male type, people working out 24/7, but just like, if you do a good job with, some decent supplements, exercise, twice a week or something, and you watch your diet, and you have a bit of a healthy lifestyle, uh, what can you expect in your, like, 50s and 60s and beyond? What have you seen for those doing it well?
Yeah, so I think probably the 3 kind of pillars that really come to my mind, that you really should focus on is, I mean, obviously we talked about diet, but I keep it simple sometimes with my patients, and there's all these type of diets, right, that are out there. But to keep it simple, I would say just really eliminate your ultra processed carbs and all.
Mm.
Basically, I keep it simple.
Learn how
Say
to cook again.
yeah, that
Just
too.
start
Yeah.
from
And I
scratch.
think that should be incorporated in schools back,
Oh yeah.
learn how to cook. That's an essential skill, right? But, if it looks like it came from a factory, probably not something you want to put in your body, right?
Mhm.
You can indulge say once a week at the most and have that one dessert a week, but on the weekend or something. But for the most part, if it looks like it came from the factory, probably not a great thing to put in your body. So that's how I keep it simple. And if you kind of just follow that, I think that'll be
And I gotta say, like, none of us are perfect.
Yeah.
Like, I am such a chocoholic. I do, binge a little bit and then I'll gain some weight and I'm like, oh my God, I gotta cut back. Right. But I have a way to cut back. I'll just, fast a little bit more and I'll cut out the sugar for a while. One of the best things, actually, you tell me what you think, because I'm really into fasting. One of the best things I find for people is if you can't fast, sugar fast. And when I say sugar, is get rid of all the complex carbs. So your pasta, sometimes rice if you want to, but anything that's flour, so bread, anything's made of flour, and anything that has sugar as a main ingredient, and cut that out for like a week, and then you'll find that it's so much easier to stick to the rest of your diet because of your microbiome. There's little creepy crawlies inside your biome that I don't know why I call them creepy crawlies, but there's things in your biome that they eat your sugar and then they secrete hormones that make you super hungry. And if you wonder where some of these cravings are coming from, you think that's you. Sometimes that's the gut.
Yeah.
So if you do a sugar fast, you kind of starve that particular population and it dwindles and the other healthy biome stuff grows in your gut. And then when you try to you try to stick to a diet, you'll find, wow, I've got so much more discipline, so much more, so much more able to stick to the diet. And it's because you had this thing inside you that's making you hungry.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right on, because we have a symbiotic relationship with our gut bacteria, and there's actually more of them than you actually in terms of cells.
Got 1 trillion cells you get rid of every day,
and they actually, to a certain degree, they influence your behavior too. You're kind of controlled.
They affect your brain. We're seeing connections between the microbiome and certain psychological states like schizophrenia, narcolepsy, and stuff like that.
Yeah. So certainly gut health is important. And where was I going to go with this?
But the gut health starts with what you feed it.
Yeah.
So if you feed it the processed stuff, then the biome, like we wonder, why did our biome get all screwed up? It's because you're feeding it that's the food. So there's always going to be those microbiomes that eat the sugar.
Yeah.
But if you don't give it a lot to eat, then that population won't grow very much, and then it doesn't spiral.
Right. Oh yeah. The other point I want to make is, sometimes we have this kind of belief system that I got a sweet tooth. Hey, I don't think you're necessarily born with a sweet tooth, right? So I think we just instill that kind of thought into our brain. But if you do that sugar detox, it's surprising that your palate starts to change, right? So actually, it's not as appealing. You don't get that same effect, and it just doesn't taste as good, actually.
Well, and that's one of the interesting things too, is you start to notice. So when you're not overwhelming your palate with all these high sugary stuff, you're cutting down on the sugar. Then when you do have a little bit of sweetener, it goes a long way.
Yeah.
So like the best one example is coffee. I remember there was a time where I loved to have some coffee with my sugar. And I would literally do triple every time. It's like three sugars, 3 creams in my coffee. And then I cut it down to just black. I got used to black for about a week. And then when I had just like a hint of sugar, it was like, oh, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
So we the people who are eating a lot of junk food, they're not enjoying it all that much because your brain adjusts your senses to kind of deaden these things. Same with any flavor.
Yeah. And then the other big thing that maybe people don't pay attention to is sleep. I mean, that you do that hopefully at least 8 hours, 7 hours a day, right? But yeah, that's probably one of the best recovery tools, and we know it's great for memory consolidation, right? So yeah, and there's ways to track sleep easily nowadays, and you could use like an Aura Ring or Apple Watch these days. You could see how much REM sleep you're getting, how much deep sleep you're getting, and I think people understand and are not really paying attention to their sleep. And what I'm finding these days, now that obesity rates are up, if you have symptoms of, if your spouse notices you kind of snoring or stop breathing, if you're just lethargic throughout the day, if you there's probably a good chance that you have sleep apnea. So far, like, I don't want to be necessarily proud about this, but like, I'm probably like 99% for 100 diagnosing sleep apnea, or sending people
Really?
over and getting tested, and they have moderate to severe sleep apnea, and that's probably the worst things to have, really, in terms of your longevity, because that affects your heart. You can have cardiomyopathy, heart attacks, all sorts of bad things off of sleep apnea. So sleep apnea is pretty underdiagnosed, I think, and a big uh setback for your longevity.
How important do you think it is to not wake up with an alarm clock, to wake up naturally?
Yeah. So ideally, yes, I think getting that, if you're able to do that, that means that you're in good circadian rhythm, and you're in flow with nature, and you have that good circadian clock.
But
So
how unhealthy is it if you have to rely on an alarm clock to wake up?
yeah, I can't give you, like, I didn't look in the studies, or I couldn't tell you, but I could just tell you you're probably more in line if you are able to wake up more naturally. But yeah, I
I
wouldn't have
feel
an
like
answer for that.
it's cumulative, right? Because
Hmm.
you have to wake yourself up, then you have like stimulants like coffee, and then you're moving,
Yeah.
and then because you feel like crap, you'll turn to something sweet, and something that's the
Hmm.
old coffee with a donut thing,
Yeah.
because it makes you feel better
Yeah.
temporarily, right? And
Yeah.
maybe if you had a better night's sleep, you'd already feel better. You'd
Yeah.
already feel good and wouldn't need something to kind of change your mood.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of going back to sleep apnea, right? I mean, it's almost like, what's one way you torture somebody?
Yeah,
Sleep
sleep
deprivation,
deprivation.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're not sleeping well, your executive function, you're not going to make great decisions, and
Yeah.
food is going to be one of them, right?
Mhm.
So sleep is one. And then another big thing we talked a lot about, especially in the conference recently, is chronic stress and addressing
Mhm.
that. And that's probably something I gotta work
Yeah,
on a
yeah.
little
Talk
bit
to us about
more,
the effects of chronic stress on the
yeah.
brain.
So just one hormone we already know is cortisol. That's your
Mhm.
stress hormone. And we're supposed to design to have cortisol and make us alert in times
Mhm.
of when we need to be, if we're scared or we need to act on something. But if we had that constantly spiking, that cortisol that's constantly in our bloodstream, that goes to the brain, and that can actually inflame the brain, and also shrink things like your hippocampus, your memory
Mhm.
center. So it's severely
I heard
neurotoxic.
I
Yeah.
heard about cortisol,
Hmm.
that cortisol is the hormone that your body uses because it thinks it's going to get into a fight.
Hmm.
So it's one of those things that it limits bleeding, right?
Hmm.
And so how does that have an effect on the rest of your system? Because your brain is very sensitive to blood flow.
Yeah.
If you have this chemical flushing through you every time you just stress out a little bit, um, that leads like inflammation in the
Hmm.
brain, and that does that lead to like worse decision making, or what?
Of course, yeah. Your executive function's not going to be as
Memory.
sharp. Yeah, memory's not going to be as good, and you're just pretty much setting up your pathway for Alzheimer's disease, really.
Mhm.
And there's also ischemic dementia, which are stroke, right?
Wow.
So yeah, so cortisol is, I think, underplayed.
I feel like we could keep on going forever, but it looks like we reached the hour
Awesome.
here. Are there any questions that came up, Maya, that we want to?
There are a few. Tad asked, how do we find mold-free coffee?
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's easily searchable on Google, but
Give us your
yeah,
link, or give us your
yeah.
like let them
You
know
can
how they can get a
find
hold of you.
yeah, but you can find me on New Gen Peak Performance on my podcast, and I'll probably put a link out later this week on that. Maybe I'll talk about that in relation to mycotoxins. But um I think Danger Coffee, one person that I kind of, like you said, I wanted to emulate or kind of game
Mhm.
plan, was Dave Asprey.
Yeah,
He
Danger
got me
Coffee.
into
Yeah.
the biohacking side of things. So I
So
think
New Gen Peak Performance, NEWGEN, and then
Peak
Peak Performance.
Performance. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just .com.
We don't
Or
have a .com,
well,
just
look
Instagram.
up
Yeah.
New Gen Peak Performance, and you can find out more. So he does everything from the genetic testing to testing for heavy
Mhm.
metals and toxins and the molds and everything else, but also a lot of really great advice on how to how simple things that you could think. Thing I love about what you do is you're not like the person who's like talking about a million and one biohacking tools. You're talking about like just focus on like these three, and you're getting 90% of the way there. Like,
Mhm.
so you're something that you can fit into an ordinary lifestyle with a person who has like has kids and has a job and has a life, you know. Some of these things that people get into, some of these biohacking things, is like, you know, they're talking about all these different things, and it's like 1% improvement here and
Right.
4% improvement there. And it's just, I don't have time for this,
Yeah.
guys. Give me a bottle of one thing, and I can figure this out. Any other questions?
What can you speak regarding the best way to keep brain healthy for aging well and to reduce brain fog?
I think one thing, I don't know if I could call it epidemic, but I think just one thing you could notice into your diet is protein intake. I think, especially as we age, we're probably not consuming enough protein.
Really?
Yeah. So
Is that like people are like, they want to cut back on their calories so they don't have like a big steak, but they still have the chocolate?
I think
they
it's
still have the sugar?
multifactorial, just because of, steaks cost a lot of money
That's true,
and
too.
rice
You
is
can have
cheap.
eggs.
Yeah, eggs.
get
Well, you know how
Yeah.
much eggs on Guam? It's like
Yeah, eggs are
$8.
expensive. They're worth it. They're worth it. But so like there was this great study that if you start the day with eggs,
Yeah.
you can have my son discovered your baby grand piano. I walked into this guy's house. He has a baby grand piano. And I'm like, oh, you're doing all right. All right. So if you start the day with eggs, lean protein like that, then it's much more likely that you're going to stick to a diet later on in the day because you start with that protein. So it's exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah.
So really it is like, it's not, I always say cut out the sugar. That's my first, go-to, but you're like, well, no, include the protein and that'll help you cut out the sugar because
because you feel full, right? A lot of times diets don't work because you feel hungry. You gotta be full, and protein can do that.
That's it. Everybody snack on bacon. Just snack on the bacon. There you go. Any other questions? This is good.
Last question, is there a more natural way of treating sleep apnea without the CPAP?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes you could use mouthpiece or corrective devices that, what do you call those now? Not those retainers, but almost like a mouth guard, and those kind of help open up the palate. I don't feel like the nasal strips and things don't work.
I have a question though.
Yeah.
So if I sleep on my back, my palate does fall down. So I would have sleep apnea if I slept on my back.
Yeah.
But because it falls down just as I'm falling asleep, I feel like I'm being choked. So I never fall asleep that way.
Yeah.
So over time, I've always just slept on my stomach. And then so like gravity keeps the palate up.
Yeah.
And like I had a lot of breathing problems when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I was in the hospital for it and everything. So breathing is really important to me. Is that maybe like sleep position is something people should
certainly
look
like
into?
if you're on your side, it's just physics, right? It's less likely to just kind of
like talk about
on
the
the
physics
weight.
of like what sleep apnea actually is.
Yeah.
It's your palate that falls
So
down.
your palate, your tongue falls down, or not your palate, but your tongue kind of slips back and it obstructs your airway.
You're choking on your own
so
tongue.
if you're like this, it's going to come down. So on the side, sleeping might alleviate it, but it's not always the case, So there's actually one surgical intervention, like dental surgical thing, that you could do. I learned about it in a conference, but I'll send it in a link. I'll figure it. Yeah, but
for me, I found sleep position makes a huge difference, but it's really tough to train yourself to sleep in a new position.
Yeah, but your best bet is just weight loss. A lot of people are just overweight, big thick neck, or the chest is just kind of occluding down. So weight loss is always the best bet first.
What about sleeping on an incline, like an incline pillow or something, where you're
that could be helpful sometimes, especially if you have acid reflux too.
But while you're trying to lose the weight, you got to do something in the meantime, right?
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? We're all good. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much for your time, and thanks very much for bringing me to Guam. And together we're gonna change the world.
All right. Good deal.
All right. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining us.
All right.